Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'll go out and come back in again. Thank you very much. Kelbert, stand closer to me, would you please, so I can bask in your reflected glory here. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Please. Thank you. December 10th, 2 years ago, was the inauguration of this administration. And at the time, I indicated that we'd be playing 4 quarters. And so we'll be coming up on halftime pretty soon. And at the time, we indicated that we had a game plan, a financial plan that we wanted to put into effect. And that we were coming from a situation in which we were in a pretty deep hole financially, fiscally speaking. And that the confidence of the markets and investors, where there is a pretty cool and cold calculation taking place every day with respect to the stability of the various states and their bond offerings, which determine, of course, what the interest rates are and what the confidence of those who do the investing have, what confidence they have in how the state is operating. So we had a real long path to get up along in terms of that confidence. But we indicated last year that we were going in the right direction, and investors responded accordingly. We were able to come out of a fiscal deficit and move into a positive balance. Of course, that obviously doesn't mean we had a surplus. You have a surplus once you meet your shortfalls, once you meet your deficit and the shortfalls in terms of revenue projections. But we were on the right track. We were on the right path, and that was recognized last year. It was recognized by having very low interest rates. And you'll be able to see as Kelbert goes over the various performance comparables here, that as to what that meant. And as a result then of the fiscal path that we were taking, confidence not only has been renewed, but it's been enhanced. And again, the credit rating agencies who take a cold and objective look, and investors who have to decide whether or not they continue to have confidence or in fact have increased confidence in the state of Hawaii. They make their presence known. For the first time, I believe, a governor in the state of Hawaii, in any event, actually asked people in Hawaii to invest, to take a look at our fiscal situation and see whether or not they had confidence right here in Hawaii. We sold this year $66 million to individual investors, not the institutional investors here. Of course we want them, and that's the test of whether we can meet the big picture qualifications for confidence. But we ask individual investors whether or not they had confidence in the state of Hawaii. $66 million, $34 million, better than half of that investment came right here in Hawaii. That means investors who previously perhaps looked a bit from afar at Hawaii saying, "Ooh, I don't know." That means they, in turn, right here in Hawaii, understand that we're on the right path, that we've got a fiscal plan that makes sense, that we're moving towards that shortfall that we know we have to come to grips with, that everybody understands that we're going to deal effectively and openly on our unfunded liabilities, that we're going to meet the standards for initiatives that will show progress for our people, and that we're going to be able to recognize whatever we have to do by way of collective bargaining and the stability of our public workforce. All those things are taken into account in our financial plan. And the one sure key to understanding where we are in that fiscal game plan is what the interest rates are and what the markets recognize in terms of their confidence in the state of Hawaii. And with that, then, I would like to introduce the person that I think ranks with any budget and finance director anywhere in the United States, a true treasure for Hawaii, who is thinking, how am I going to follow up on what the governor just said about me? Calbert Young. You'll notice, Calbert, that I got scattered applause, but yours was steady and full right across the room.
That's because we have mostly contractors in the room. So, I'm pleased to announce that this morning the State of Hawaii closed its 2012 general obligation bond transaction for $867 million, which delivered over $959 million in proceeds to the State of Hawaii. The transaction included $470 million in new bonds, but it also refunded about $397 million in previously existing bonds for savings, reducing the state's overall debt service and debt costs. The transaction also generated $92 million in bond premiums, which will be used towards the future debt service payments of the State of Hawaii. Now, the transaction is most notable because the state sold bonds with up to 20-year maturities at an interest rate of 2.6%. That is the lowest in the history of the State of Hawaii.
I'll leave the applause on that one.
And we'll look here on the chart here what the significance is on where this transaction has occurred. Going back to the turn of the century, I guess, 2000, you see the line dictates the municipal bond index, and the points indicate where Hawaii has sold its general obligation bonds across that time. I will note that Hawaii has historically been able to sell at interest rates less than the municipal bond index, but if you notice where this current transaction falls, it is significantly lower than the index for that day and significantly lower than any spread in the previous history for the state on any transaction. Now, although the low rate is partly indicative of the current interest rate environment, much of the state's ability to actualize delivery on the low rate is due to the efforts of the state's financing team, whom I would like to thank for their efforts on this transaction. In addition to the state's budget and finance staff, the state employed the services of 8 underwriting investment banks, led by Mr. Timothy Romer from Goldman Sachs as the lead senior manager, and Mr. Frank Lauterbur from Bank of America Merrill Lynch as the other senior manager. Mr. Peter Miller from PFM served as the state's financial advisor on this transaction. In addition to the historically low interest rate, this transaction is also considered successful because of what the state was able to achieve in a number of other areas, such as the state's financing team was able to present to, and the governor personally met with, credit agency analysts in Hawaii within the state. Those agencies reaffirmed Hawaii's AA credit ratings, but more importantly, agencies also affirmed the state's fiscal and financial management are on the right path to address and improve Hawaii's financial condition. Our efforts over the last 2 years have not gone unnoticed by credit agencies and by investors. The state also increased its efforts to proactively reach out to investors. The governor did radio advertisements informing residents of the benefits of purchasing bonds and investing their money in Hawaii. I believe the response has been positive. As the governor mentioned, $66 million of bonds went to individual investors across the country, of which $34 million were for Hawaii residents. That is significant. Additionally, we met and conversed with over a dozen institutional investors who purchased the bulk of Hawaii bonds. This transaction generated more than 3 times the amount of demand for bonds than there were bonds available. We want to make sure that investors are comfortable with Hawaii as a strong and improving credit, but we also want to give them concrete reasons to know that that is indeed the case. The performance of the state of Hawaii on this transaction and the statistics of this transaction should be notable for taxpayers because it helps residents know that their state is working to improve its fiscal condition. At this point, I would like to offer Mr. Timothy Romer from Goldman Sachs, the lead co-senior manager underwriter on this transaction, the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the underwriting team. Mr. Romer.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor and Director Young. It's very clear to us that investors in the market have spoken. Hawaii is a great place to invest. It's a strong testament and truly a vote of confidence in the efforts by the Governor, Director Young, and the Legislature to put the state on the right path towards solid financial footing, not just today, but for the next 20 years. On behalf of Goldman Sachs and Bank of America Merrill Lynch, we are honored to be involved and to be working with such a strong team and to have such a great story to tell, frankly, to investors. It's equally honoring to us to be involved in such an important financing because not only did we help the state save money, but we also are helping the state invest in some very critical and important infrastructure in schools, transportation, and other needs for the future of Hawaii. Thank you very much. We are honored to be involved.
Thank you, Tim. So I think we can sum up what's taking place today and what has taken place over the last 2 years by saying that we are back on track in Hawaii, that our four-quarter game is underway in the fashion that our initial game plan outlined. The credit rating agencies have taken notice. The investors, institutional and individual, have taken notice both nationally and locally. We see that in the improving unemployment statistics. We see that in our employment rate rising. We have among the lowest unemployment rates for urban areas and as well as across the state of any place in the country. We are on track to be able to deal with the question of a fiscal cliff falling off. We're not falling off any cliffs anymore in the state of Hawaii. We've climbed up that cliff, and we're moving in the other direction, away from that kind of fall. If it can't be handled in Washington, D.C., we've taken that into account in the financial planning that we're doing as well. We intend to see that the good start that we made and the good path we're following right now is continued. We intend to see as we go into the third quarter that the confidence that's been shown in the state of Hawaii in terms of its financial planning, its financial game plan, we intend to see that confidence is continued and, in fact, increased. And so I couldn't be happier with the team that put this together, and I can assure all the people of Hawaii that we're going to continue on this positive path. Thank you very much. Now I think we can take some questions, or if you don't have questions, if you have observations that you'd like some commentary on, I'll be pleased to do so and to ask Calbert to step in and give any necessary detail.
In the budget that you're going to release later this month, is it going to be presumed that the labor savings and the tax adjustments that were made to get through the last biennium are no longer going to be necessary going forward? Can you say that concrete now that you're not going to need it?
No, the question has to do with the labor savings and the tax adjustments in order to get us back on fiscal track. Yes, I said that publicly, that's what we wanted to do, that's what we needed to do, that's what I asked people to do. You may recall that the analogy that I used, that the metaphorical approach to it had to do with the canoe and us all being in the canoe and pulling together. We're on the right fiscal path. We have a positive balance on our way to dealing with the shortfall. And so I think that we can address the question of necessary initiatives, including consideration of what we need to do in terms of a public employee pay and benefits. And I think you'll see that made quite clear in the upcoming budget presentation to the legislature.
You mentioned unfunded liabilities. What's the status of that picture as well?
Well, no, the unfunded liabilities question is being addressed. The question was whether it was improving. In the mega picture, in the big picture, it's not improving. That is to say, improving if by that one meant are the necessary requirements to meet the unfunded liabilities diminishing? They aren't. If anything, they're expanding. And this is for good reason. I mean, our population is aging. More people are living longer. The costs associated with health care premiums and et cetera are going up. We have to get those under control. So in that sense, the responsibilities and the obligations with respect to unfunded liabilities are, if anything, increasing and expanding. The question then becomes, are we going to address it? The difficulty before, from the institutional investor point of view, from the bond interest foundation, was that it wasn't being addressed at all. In fact, if anything, we were running away from the idea, let alone the responsibility of dealing with unfunded liabilities. We're not doing that anymore. Our fiscal game plan will be addressing it directly will be reflected in the financial game plan that we'll present to the people of the state and to the legislature. We're taking it into account. We're going to take positive steps. By no means will we be able to address it fully and completely during these next 2 years. But what we can indicate clearly and comprehensively to the taxpayers and to the investment community that we are going to come to grips with it and begin to wrestle this giant to the ground.
Can you elaborate at all?
I can, and I will in January.
I would say that going through on this transaction as well as on the previous transactions, unfunded liabilities for all of the states is very much top of mind with investors. Hawaii statistically does not show well. We have very poor metrics in terms of where the state is for its unfunded liability. But what investors have recognized is that in coordination with the state legislature, the administration over the last 2 years have made significant inroads to put into place measures that would help alleviate a lot of the unfunded liabilities. And I'm speaking specifically on pension reform measures that have been passed by the legislature over the last 2 years, have been significantly noticed by investors. They are notable compared to what other states have done across the country. The state of Hawaii still needs to deal with a plan for the EUTF, or the Employer Union Trust Fund, so the health fund liabilities for state and county government retirees. But the discussion at the legislature has been very vigorous over the last 2 years. We believe that over the next coming 2 years, the administration will continue to work with the legislature and get a proactive plan for the state of Hawaii to demonstrate its fortitude to dealing with those liabilities. And investors have responded. They have recognized that Hawaii has a plan, or and at least are in the discussion to deal with what we have already identified as our challenges.
I'm putting together right now, because we're in the final stages of getting our budget proposal in the middle of December to the upcoming legislature. And obviously, from the time we do that in mid-December until the formal opening of the legislature, we'll be refining that. What we can tell you is that this administration will be addressing and proposing to the legislature steps to continue to confront the unfunded liability challenge. And we're very hopeful that the legislature will coordinate and collaborate with us on this. We believe that the bond markets, the investors who enable us to have these low interest rates now recognize that that's our intention, and I believe they have confidence that we're going to present a positive program that will continue us on the right path to fiscal stability.
How do the fiscal cliff conversations that are going on in Washington play into the overall picture here in Hawaii? What programs are you worried about? What you mentioned, if they can't fund it in Washington, we got a plan to take care of it here. Can you be more specific about that?
Yes, I suspect that if we use the figure around from $25 to $40 million, depending on what may happen over the next a couple of weeks, it would be the immediate effect in terms of the budget considerations that the legislature has to take into account. So we've accommodated that in the financial plan that we'll be presenting. We're going to take the most conservative approach to this. We're going to assume that they are not able to come to an accommodation before the new Congress is sworn in, and well, I hope that doesn't come true. I hope that the present Congress, which is post-election, meaning it's a lame duck. That is to say, there are members there who have been defeated or retired, who will not be there in January when the congressional inauguration takes place in the first week in January. So we're hopeful that they will take some steps, positive steps, to deal with the financial questions that are extant in Washington. But if they don't, we're prepared in our financial plan, which will become more concrete in terms of your question in days to come. I simply don't want to get more specific with you right now because I don't know what they're going to do over the next 2 weeks. But we think our general assessment and analysis of how we would be affected if they're not able to come to an agreement with one another in Washington is between $25 and $40 million. Is that correct? Yeah, and in the immediate. Obviously, there are some midterm and long-term consequences of that we have to come to grips with later on. But so we're ready for that part, and I'm hopeful that when the new Congress comes in January, that whatever stopgap measures, if they're inaugurated over the next couple of weeks, are in place, can be elaborated on and dealt with in a more comprehensive fashion in the new Congress.
What can you say about the defense spending cuts, though? Because that could potentially affect us.
Well, I don't want to speak too authoritatively about what might take place in that, but my experience over the 2 decades I was on the Armed Services Committee and my continuing dialogue at the Pentagon as governor, particularly as a member of the Council of Governors that the President named governors within the governors to deal with questions of defense. From the National Guard on through to budgetary considerations for the armed services. I think I can say definitively there, and perhaps I can quote right from the conference that was held with the White House today. This, as a member of the National Governors Association and a member of the Council of Governors that deals with defense issues, I can say that we made a presentation to the President today that states should be given increased flexibility to create necessary efficiencies such as I've been outlining here, and that because we've had to make very difficult decisions in order to balance our budgets, we continue to need to have a transformation process available to us. And so with regard to defense, I think we're fairly well prepared on that. The cuts that will take place in the defense budget have more to do with procurement issues of big military platforms. That is to say, expenditure, say, for weapon systems and those kinds of expenses that involve large projects. The ongoing expenses, the operating expenses of the Pacific Command, which is the immediate concern of people in Hawaii with regard to defense expenditures, I think will, if anything, be very limited. People are going to continue to be paid. Obligations with regard to training and maintenance and so on are going to be sustained. So I don't want to preclude that there may be some adjustments that need to be made here in the Pacific, but the likelihood that operational expenditures will be delimited severely, I think, is unlikely. And I believe that the emphasis of the United States in the Asia-Pacific region will not diminish. And as a result, I expect whatever takes place in terms of defense budget cuts will be less likely to zero in on Hawaii and the Pacific region than it will be in some of the more institutional military platform venues that I think are much more likely to be targeted. Thank you very much.